Test. Test. Cool. Right, let's shout this out on socials. Hey, Spooky Kitty, just getting the stream ready. Okay. Streaming now. Sent. Just gonna post it on my Instagram. Oh, wrong Instagram. Alright. Live streaming now. Come and join. Yeah, I hope everyone's okay. Everyone had a good weekend. Had a fun stream on, what day was it? Sunday night. Why should I come and join? Okay. Okay, anyone who watched my video yesterday, did you like the Jordan Peterson / Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain introduction? So some people got it. Some people thought it was funny. I thought it was funny. Okay, this is what I wanted. Just reading some comments. Hey Veronica, thanks for joining. Got some Veronica's probably one of the oldest subscribers I remember. Some more JK. Imagine being more famous for your hot takes in your book series. I saw the trailer for this when I went to see Sonic 2. They put her name in it, big letters. Yeah, because she writes them, doesn't she? She wrote the screenplay for the first two, I believe. I think she writes it for this one as well. I like your edits. Thanks, Count. Can you make a video about these overpopulation cults that are forming on Reddit? I haven't actually seen that. I know like the royal family are big on that. Overpopulation is such a big load of shit. Like I was saying this to my girlfriend recently. Because in the summer I drove from London to Scotland, then around Scotland. And something that's amazing about driving around such a small country as England is, there is so much empty space that is not farmland. Like so much. And if you really wanted, to mobilize society enough to find homes for people, you could totally build up communities in rural parts of, especially the technology we have today. Instead, everyone just comes to London, and like nearly a tenth of that tenth. No, it's way higher than that. I think there's 55 or 58 million people live in England. I mean, about 9 million live in London. So what's that like? Nearly a sixth of the English population live in one city. So like, yeah, it's always crazy, the overpopulation argument. It's like there is, and England and Ireland especially are two nations to be less affected by climate change, and there's so much space there. And it's always makes me laugh, right? Like the problem is that we focus too much on massive cities, and hopefully with like work from home taking off a bit more in the UK. Other cities get built up a bit more. But yeah, like someone who's from the UK, I've drove around the whole of this country pretty much. I've seen how much space there is. The problem is people don't want to develop that space, and that's why like we're pretty much fucked, to be honest, because we have the technology to set up new towns and everything like that, but we just don't do it. The Jordan Peterson MGS intro had me dying. Yeah, I'm glad. I thought it was funny. This must be the cancer Knuckles doing. Yeah, perhaps. Hey Eric, yeah, it's good to be streaming again. It's kind of it was weird not like interacting, because since I've been doing it full time the whole of last year, I've been streaming 2 times a week, pretty much every single week. And that's obviously like interacting with my subscribers. Whereas when I was in Spain, I think I live streamed about 2 times, and it wasn't very fun because I knew I couldn't stay up late doing it. Like obviously it was a studio apartment with my girlfriend, and the walls were really thin, so I didn't want to keep up the neighbours. A lot of people were old there as well, old British pensioners and shit like that. I heard you're a baller. Well, I play football. It honestly really depends. I quit like semi-pro football in 2020 because I just wasn't enjoying it, and I've had bad knee injuries. I like playing at university. I played left wing. Sometimes I play striker. Traditionally, I've kind of grown up playing defense and like defensive midfield, but I got a bit quicker when I got older, so I played a bit further up. And then I just play five-a-side now, so just all-rounder. I like to pass the ball. That's my favourite thing to do. Of course I played left wing. Did anyone watch the football tonight? That was absolutely crazy. I'm so happy Villarreal won. But also, that Chelsea game was absolutely mad as well. Has anyone seen the new Fantastic Beasts movie? Because the thing is, I've never watched the second one, but genuinely, the first Fantastic Beasts movies was one of the worst movies I've ever seen in the cinema. The only recent movie I can think was worse that I paid money in the cinema to see was The Rise of Skywalker, which was, I think, worse than Fantastic Beasts 1. But I thought it was one of the most boring, rubbish like movies I've seen in a long, long time. In something that should have been interesting, like 1920s, was it New York? Like wizarding New York and shit like that. That's like a good idea, and they completely like butchered it and just made a really, really boring film. Pirating it for laughs. It's not out in Canada. My brother saw it the other day. He said it wasn't great. If you want to watch a good period drama set in 1920s East Coast America, watch Boardwalk Empire. It's such a good show. It actually has one of the Fantastic Beasts main characters in it. Is it Catherine Mortensen, who plays the main character's love interest in this? It plays one of the main characters in season 4 of Boardwalk Empire. Boardwalk Empire's cast is just sick. Like, obviously Steve Buscemi plays the main character. You have Michael K. Williams playing one of the other main characters. Was it Bobby Cannavale playing a gangster? Like, what's his name? He's in some Coen Brothers movies. Shit, I forgot his name. Michael Stolberg, I think, plays Arnold Rothstein. Yeah, it's just a great show. The best character, if anyone has watched Boardwalk Empire, the best character is Richard Harrow. Yeah, Ezra Miller has obviously been in loads of controversy as well. Fantastic Beasts 2 is one of the worst movies I've ever seen. I plan on making YouTube videos soon. I want to review the second Fantastic Beasts because it's so bad. Yeah, I think it was Jenny Nicholson's review of Fantastic Beasts 2 that I absolutely loved. I love when a movie is so bad and a review just proper roasts it. Like, what I wanted more of, I wanted more Dear Evan Hansen roasts, because Jenny Nicholson did like a 2-hour review. Is it 2 hour? Maybe 1 hour review of Dear Evan Hansen. And that movie just looks so fucking bad, and I just loved every second of that review. Why was the new Star Wars trilogy so bad? Anyways, it genuinely confuses me. Oh, do you mean you haven't watched it, or like, why do you reckon it's gone so bad? Massive L Chelsea, yeah. Oh my god, Kavernacle live. Yeah, I'm live. Um, sorry, I'm reading some more stuff. Haven't oh hey know that. Haven't seen it, don't plan to. Yeah, I'm in the exact same boat. I hope Mads Mikkelsen got a good paycheck. Yeah, it's disappointing he's in it. I need to see Valhalla Rising because obviously it's directed by Nick Refn and both of them are in Death Stranding, so I want to watch it. The Northman looks good. Yeah, because loads of right wing chuds love Viking shit, don't they? Um Dear Evan Hansen is good. No, Tefan, I'm not accepting that. It looks absolutely god awful. Apparently, the musical was okay. But Jenny Nicholson, if you want a good insight, Jenny Nicholson has watched both, and she says the changes made in the movie really harm the overall message of the play. Basically, holy shit, Cav got a job at Warner Brothers. Actually, a supervising counselor. Yeah, that is my influence. And actually, I've been to the Warner Brothers studio in Watford, London, and I was doing a press thing for my university's magazine, and I got to play Lego Dimensions. Was it two? Maybe it was two early, and we actually spoke about Fantastic Beasts because it hadn't come out yet, but they'd seen it because they had Fantastic Beast characters in the game. So maybe I am on their like address book or something. Iron Boy, I don't I don't understand what that message even means. Yeah, so the thing is that so some of you might not remember this because you might be a bit younger. Basically, because of the prequel movies and the general reception to the prequel movies, even though I think they're the better ones in terms of the story and the universe, maybe not as good movies as the old ones. But honestly, I prefer Revenge of the Sith to like pretty much all the old Star Wars movies. Um, Basically, they made a conscious decision to completely move away from prequel stuff. Like they cancelled the Clone Wars show, and that's why it feels so weird when you're watching the new trilogy. Is that nothing that happened in the prequels is ever mentioned again? And Colin Trevorrow's script for Episode 9 actually had a load of prequel stuff in it. Like it had Coruscant, it had like Mustafar, it had all these different places and loads of ties back to the prequel trilogy. And Darth Sidious wasn't in the original draft of Episode 9. If you go read the script for that, it sounds a million times better because Kylo Ren is just like the out and out villain, which makes a lot more sense in my opinion. Um, so that's the problem is that they thought the fan base so much did not like the prequel films that they completely did a 180 and essentially just rehashed all the old trilogy films because basically it's embarrassing how there is basically no similarities between the prequel films and the old trilogy because they are unique films. Obviously, George Lucas directed all the prequels. He directed the first Star Wars, and he wrote this other two, um, and they are very distinct from each other. Like whether you like them or not, they do not feel the same. But the sequel films all feel the same. Episode 7 is a rehash of 4. Episode 8 is a rehash of Return of the Jedi and also Empire Strikes Back. And then the last one, I don't even know what the last one is. It's like a rehash of Return of the Jedi and added in a bunch of really rubbish stuff as well. Basically, I always said that Episode 9 feels like it was written by Redditors and prequel memes. But prequel memes, because like even the Emperor saying like "do it," and the Emperor saying like, I think he said something like the dark side of the Force is a path to many things some would consider unnatural. Like that is from prequel memes. Those lines are popular from prequel memes. You put them in because you think that is what the fan base want to hear. And it's so annoying in my mind that George Lucas had this vision for these movies that would have been very unique, and then it shows with the success of The Mandalorian that people don't want like something that does not recognize the rest of it. People don't just love the old trilogy anymore. People love the prequel films. So although Mandalorian is set after episode 6, it still has lots of ties and callbacks to either the wider universe, obviously massively from Star Wars Rebels. Like so many characters from Star Wars Rebels are popping up in Mandalorian and Boba Fett, and also things from the Bad Batch and things from Clone Wars. But that's what people want. Like if you're a Marvel film, Marvel films don't act like, for the most part, other Marvel films didn't happen. But with the new Star Wars films, they try to act like the prequels never happened. While the shows and like the Clone Wars and Rebels, they all acknowledge the expanded universe, because how can you have like such an important part of your story told by the original creator of the movies and the main creator of the Clone Wars, the original seasons, and then just completely throw that out and then try and basically reboot it in a worse fashion? Like the three sequel movies are not better than any of the prequels. Like I don't even care what people say. Like at least on a story level, I'd say that like The Last Jedi is a better movie than the first two prequels, but it is not a better Star Wars product. Like if you were just thinking about the story and the lore, it is not a better Star Wars movie than pretty much any of them. But that I can at least acknowledge that Episode 8, as much as I don't like it, is actually like a decent enough movie, where Episode 9 is just a complete dumpster fire, like literally one of the worst movies that I've ever seen in my life. And Episode 7 is just a rehash of Episode 4. Like, it's fine. I don't think it's... And like, even like the talent in it, like, how do you have Kerry Russell and Oscar Isaac in Episode 9 as like some sort of like old couple or something, and you completely waste it? Like, Adam Driver was the only good part of those films. Like, I don't hate Daisy Ridley or anything, but that character was nothing. And even Finn as well in Star Wars, that character was nothing. Like, who gives a shit about Rey and Finn? And my problem is, they could have maybe redeemed Kylo Ren's character. I don't understand, why did he have to die? Why do you kill off the only interesting character? Because as we were seeing, like you were seeing the Obi-Wan show, which of course getting like a lot of even having like fucking Joel Edgerton back as Uncle Owen is mad. But like, why didn't they keep like Kylo Ren alive, and maybe he like goes off? And if you're playing around with like the Jedi going away and the Sith going away, when here is a guy who could be like a combination of both, not like a grey Jedi in the comics, you know, these Jedi who don't really subscribe to the traditional Jedi beliefs, but like you could have this cool character, and then you could have something about him later, because by far is the most interesting character, and now he's done. Like, that's his story over, and we have like Rey and Finn and Poe. Like, no one gives a shit about them. Think about like all the prequel characters, and even if you don't like the acting in it, and I think the acting isn't that bad in Episode 3, to be honest, you still have like these people that you like. For example, the guy who plays Jango Fett isn't like the best actor ever, but it is like hype. I haven't finished Boba Fett, but it is hype he's back to play Boba Fett, and it's hype he was in The Mandalorian and stuff. Anyway, I know it's a bit like fanboyish. I know it's not always like to the service of like if the product is great, but I think that like the Star Wars world is so interesting in a lot of ways. But the sequel, and that's why people like Rogue One so much. It's not like the most perfect movie ever, but it feels like an extension of the prequels. Like, it feels like the more darker, gritty tone of the prequels that has connections to that world as well. And that's why I like the game Jedi Fallen Order, because the clone troopers are voiced by D. Bradley Baker, who does all the clones now, instead of, is it Tamura Morrison? And then it has your master in Fallen Order is a Lasat who was invented in Star Wars Rebels, like the Lasat species, which is like inspired by the original drawing of the Wookiees. And then you have all this stuff, and then it's just really frustrating that how come like the games, the TV shows, all this stuff can recognize it, but your main product, the movies, like just are so against it. Like, that's why I don't like Episode 8 a lot. It's not because it's a bad movie. I don't think Episode 8 is a bad movie. It's because it really doesn't want to be a Star Wars movie. Like, really, it wants to be a Star Wars movie in the way it takes some aspects of the original trilogy, like the tone of it and stuff. That's pretty much it. Like, I don't understand people who will die on the hill that this is like the best Star Wars movie ever, because I would say it's not. And that's, in my mind, the prequel is like the best like Star Wars movie. The prequel, not prequels. Revenge of the Sith is the best like Star Wars movie out of the mainline movies. It's just because it does something unique. It tells like a really interesting story in a really interesting time period, and it has like a lot of cool explanations for stuff that happens later. Whereas something like, you know, there's no payoff. Like episode 9, who cares? You're bringing back the fucking Emperor with no build up. Like Palpatine's returned through dark Sith magic. Come on, laziest fucking writing in my life. It actually makes me actively angry to watch. Like I knew I remember I was sitting with my brother in the cinema. We were watching it. I turned to him in the first 10 minutes. I was like, this is so bad. And it was like when they were like jumping in and out of like hyperspace, and I was like, the pace of this movie is insane. And proved by them doing this thing that has never happened in any other Star Wars medium. Like, you can't just like pull it in and out of hyperspace in the established world. But apparently in episode 9, anything fucking goes. And then you can be like, Emperor Palpatine shooting lightning up into the sky. Because apparently, even though he's a dead body now, he's more powerful than ever. Again, oh my god, it's so bad. It gets me worked up thinking about how much I fucking hate that movie. I'm gonna take some comments now. Smith Black, thanks so much for the $2 super chat. The extra stuff is made by fans and not ghouls. Yeah, I mean, if like Dave Filoni, which people might not know, he worked on his main thing before Star Wars was Avatar: The Last Airbender, the anime, or is it an anime cartoon? I guess. And then he was the second guy who worked on Clone Wars, and then he was the main guy who did Rebels, and then he'd done some of The Mandalorian. But it's just like, you need people who actually like what George Lucas did, rather than everyone who seems to be involved with the sequel trilogies, even people who used to work with George Lucas, like Kathleen Kennedy, seem to just like hate what he did and try to like make. If I was him, I'd be pissed, because I'd be like, I can accept that like I sold it and you can do what you want, but like obviously they invited George Lucas onto the Mandalorian set because they all know he'd like it because it respects what he did, whereas the sequels are basically trying to be like a fuck you to the prequels. Wait, Sophita, what do you mean? You need to act like the new Star Wars characters are objectively wrong. That's just your opinion. Do you mean objectively bad? I don't know what wrong has to do with this. Yeah, Ray, Finn, and Poe will show up in Fantastic Beasts. It'd be like the Spider-Man thing. I'm going to get into it because this is a good article I was reading today. Kylo was cool. I will defend Kylo. Yeah, episode 9 is by far the worst, by far. No, let's not bring Mace Windu back. Like, I think it's getting a bit ridiculous now, everyone who's being brought back. Well, also the prequels have cool politics because it's the Emperor's Rise is inspired by like Richard Nixon. Obviously, like a lot of Nazi influence, I guess, as well. They should redo the sequels. Yeah, Clone Wars did a good job at humanizing separatists. That was a cool part of the Clone Wars, actually, because obviously some planets absolutely hated the Republic. Let's try to read some more comments. Bad. I don't think they're objectively bad. I just think they're very wasted characters. So for example, the most interesting little plot point of episode 9 was the other defected stormtroopers. Like, and obviously it's a cool thing because all the New Order stormtroopers, or most of them who aren't older, are stolen as children and forced into this military. And if you have a group of these people who are like ex First Order, who've been brainwashed their whole lives, that's like an interesting group and that's an interesting concept. But it's just so wasted. Like, nothing is done, and that's what I mean. Like, it's just so much is crammed in, and even that bit with the snake. Like, I'm trying to even remember some of it. That fucking assassin alien with the oh my god, it's so bad. No, Salmon. So I'm not a weeb, but I want to make a video tomorrow because I'm going to talk about this a bit. Hayao Miyazaki has basically just crapped all over like Western cinema and Lord of the Rings. And I wanted to make a video about like left-wing Japanese art, basically, like from Metal Gear to like anime. Thought it'd be a good video tomorrow. So I was just asking because I don't watch anime beyond like being a kid and watching Pokemon and Beyblade. I wanted to know what are the more left wing animes out there, so I can talk about them. When they ride horses on the Star Destroyer, yeah. What's the basest faction in Star Wars? I don't even know, to be honest. Like they all have their problems, because like the Mandalorian cult in the Mandalorian, that's cool, but it's like religious fanaticism. And then the Mandalorian terrorist group, was it Death Watch? They're also in the Mandalorian, the Clone Wars, and Rebels. They're like a bit fanatical as well. I don't really know, to be honest. The most based Star Wars faction. I guess the rebellion. Saw Gerrera. Saw Gerrera's partisans. They're the most based. Bring back Jar Jar. Jar Jar, I think, became a street performer in Naboo, and everyone hates him. I think that's canon. I think that's what happened to Jar Jar Binks. Oh man, like so let me know if you guys had this feeling too, right? So when they make a sequel to like a property you really love that's been away for years, you have like a lot of excitement for it, and it's also like a lot of apprehension. So I'm going to give you 3 examples to me. So I have Metal Gear Solid 5, Star Wars 7, and Blade Runner 2049. So like all of these properties, I felt a certain amount of like massive excitement, but a lot of anxiety. So for Metal Gear Solid 5, like you guys who've watched my Metal Gear videos, you know I love 3 and Peace Walker in terms of the story. They're my favorite Metal Gear games because I love the history and I love the plot and everything. So MGS Ground Zeroes and 5, it's a sequel to Peace Walker, like one of my favorites. It's like crazy that a PSP game mainly was getting this official, like really good looking sequel. And so like I was so excited for that, and this is like the example of like mid satisfaction. So I played Metal Gear Solid 5, like absolutely love the gameplay. Like it's given me what I want in terms of the story. Cars, having Ocelot there is really cool. Spoilers for okay, I'm not going to spoil MGS5 for you. Okay, I've decided now. I'm not going to spoil MGS5 for you. But the story I was really into, but there's obviously cut content. But then there's a twist in MGS5 that was such a gut punch, and because I love this game so much, I was role playing as this big boss character who'd been in a coma for 9 years, and the twist undermined so much of that. I really hated it, and like as much as I enjoyed the game, I just absolutely hated the twist. And so I had this like mid satisfaction, and I've actually come to accept the twist a lot as I've gotten older. There's been a lot of cool fan videos about how it plays into the original Metal Gear game. So I've accepted that. And now I have like a generally positive opinion of Metal Gear Solid 5, especially because the whole plot is similarly inspired by David Bowie's song "The Man Who Saved the World." Man Who Saved the World? What's that song? Man Who Tricked the World? What's that song? You guys tell me in the comments. Okay, and then episode 7 came out I think a couple months after MGS5, and I was really hyped. I was like, who can't be like really hyped for a new Star Wars movie? Like literally a sequel. Han Solo's back, sequel to a 1983 movie. Like, I can't wait to see this. And I come out of the cinema, I'm like, that was so disappointing. Like that did not meet my expectations at all. Did nothing I wanted to do. Like there's so much potential with this world and like the influences from the prequels, and this film just felt like a complete rehash of episode 4, and it felt like it did not want to acknowledge anything. And even the stuff with Luke not really being in it but until the end, I don't know. I thought it was a pretty lame film, and I came out thinking I really didn't like that. Like it's not a great Star Wars movie. Really did not meet my expectations in any way, and didn't give any nods to what I like in Star Wars, right? And then you guys also know I'm an absolutely massive fan of Blade Runner. So Blade Runner, when the first trailer came out for Blade Runner, I was like, you knew they got it. Like it was just this little clip, and it was Ryan Gosling walking through the snow near his apartment with all the traffic, and it was just Deckard talking from the first movie, and it was like replicants are like any other machine, they're either benefit or hazard, that famous line, and then it cuts. Blade Runner 2049 plays the theme from the original, and then just shows Ryan Gosling walking through a packed street again. That was the trailer. That was the original teaser trailer for Blade Runner. I was like, they understand like Blade Runner. They're gonna make a good Blade Runner. Then I go and see the movie. I don't think I've ever been so satisfied with a sequel. Like, I came out, I was like, I absolutely love that. Like, that is like straight into my top 5. Met every expectation. And the thing is, I didn't even really care about the story, but the fact that the movie was so good, even without really being tied into the original movie, and of course the story is tied into the original movie, but it's like so good on its own, and you even forget like it's a sequel to something. You think it's like this original thing, and I just came out of it and I was like, I'm so satisfied with that. Like, that is perfect. That is the perfect sequel where it like really respects the original film and like is inspired by it in some ways, but does its own thing completely, which fits so well into the themes of the original, and that's why it's such a good sequel. Whereas like Star Wars, it doesn't do that. Like George Lucas did that in a way in that he deviated from what he'd done before, created something very, very new. It's just the problem was those movies weren't that good as a whole. Whereas with Blade Runner, it's like this movie is better than the first one, and it doesn't try and be the first one. Like, there is nothing in that movie where you're thinking, this is extremely similar to what I've seen before, and every sequel movie felt like a worse version of something you'd seen before. So that's like 3 elements, and like Metal Gear Solid 5, like obviously very, very different. It was like an expansion on Peace Walker, but like completely different in lots of ways because the gameplay was so much more advanced. So that's like the spectrum, and like I could imagine people feel this way for the Fantastic Beasts movies as well, in the sense that like you go in with these expectations. Like, Harry Potter was amazing. Like, I remember seeing Harry Potter, the last 2 in the cinema. I was about 15, and I thought they were like such, like, especially for someone like me who the first Harry Potter came out when I was like 6 years old. I'd always loved Harry Potter. Like, I saw the second one in the cinema, even though it's kind of scarred me with that snake getting stabbed through the mouth with the sword. And I grew up with Harry Potter, and then I was 15. I watched this like culmination of all the movies, and the last Harry Potter is like an excellent ending to it, right? And I grew up with that, so I can imagine a lot of people who probably stuck with that love of Harry Potter. Like, I don't really have that love for Harry Potter, but a lot of people do. They go into Fantastic Beasts, and although it does do something like different and new, I just think it's like not interesting at all, and it's like a bad movie, the first one. But let me know what you guys think. Do you have an example like this? Because The Man Who Sold the World, thank you. Because I can imagine, like, you have like Independence Day, but who gives a shit about that? You have Jurassic Park, which I can imagine people feeling a similar way that I feel about not Star Wars, well, Star Wars and Blade Runner. Maybe even like Dune, but Dune is like, maybe Dune's its own interpretation of that compared to the 1984 one. Meow Nian, thanks so much for the 14 Canadian dollars. The most ironic leftist is Yoshiyuki Tomino, the creator of Gundam. Did you send me that on Twitter? I was flicking through my notifications quick before I started streaming. Very anti-war, very anti-commercial, but he has his franchise turned into a huge franchise, and his fans love the fascist standards. Okay, that's really interesting. I think you did send me that on Twitter, so I'm definitely going to take a look at that. Because there is a lot of like, obviously, a lot of anime is loved by the alt-right, but I want to talk more about like the explicit leftism of certain animes and Japanese things. Am I excited for the Northman? Yeah, the thing is, I am excited for the Northman. Do people think it's going to be creepy, or like, is it The Witch? Is this guy's other film? But yeah, I'm big into Viking history at the moment. I'm reading my medieval history book. I've referenced it in a few videos. Assassin's Creed Valhalla, one of my favorite games of the last couple of years. Like, the soundtrack, I'm obsessed with. I listened to it loads today. So I'm quite obsessed with that period of history these days. So I am excited for it. And obviously, Alexander Skarsgård's brother is Loki in Vikings, so it's like interesting like connection between them as well. So yeah, I'm hoping it'll be good. Blade Runner 2049 was a sequel I was not looking forward to, but ended up being my favorite sequel out of the 3 mentioned. Awesome, yeah, absolutely love that movie. Another soundtrack I just can't stop listening to. 2049 is one of my top 5 for sure. Yes. Have I watched the Blade Runner anime? I really want to watch the Blade Runner anime. I've been listening to the soundtrack a bit. It's got a good cast though. Jessica Henwick is the main character, and it's got Wes Bentley playing Jared Leto's character. Camel, I like the Blade Runner anime short for 2049. Mr. Krabs, thanks so much for the $5. Full Metal Alchemist, B Star, and Dorohedoro and Demon Slayer, all made by female writers, and they're all lefty. Awesome. Full Metal Alchemist, I've obviously heard of because that's probably the most popular, but B Star is another one I've heard of as well. What I think of the new Batman? Yeah, Benjamin. I think I archived the stream on my second channel of my like long opinions of that. But yeah, generally, I was really pretty positive about Teflon. I just think you have bad movie takes. I think, did you say earlier you like Fantastic Beasts? And you asked me what I like about Blade Runner. Maybe I'll talk about that. Yeah, but Batman I really liked. I liked how it looked very unique, distinct, very dark. Was like a complete contrast to how generic and CGI Marvel movies look, and that car chase with Penguin was really fucking good. The new trilogy felt like a reboot. Yeah, it felt like a remake, maybe. Or the Phoenix. My favorite Harry Potter is probably the last one, or the fourth one I really liked. I really hated the third one, although people love the third one. Fourth and last, I'd say. So I got Blade Runner, and underneath is some cyberpunk stuff. 2077 cyberpunk that I got with the game. The game, I do love cyberpunk. I was playing the update, the PS5 update. It looks so good. Mac, you just need to become more enlightened, man. Like Blade Runner, both Blade Runners are sick in their own way. Blade Runner 2049 is more conventionally entertaining, but I love both. So I'm just reading some more comments. Yeah, people love Prisoner of Azkaban. Like I see that as the most popular one. No, I'm not reading One Piece. I'm never reading manga, and I probably definitely won't ever watch anime. Tefan, you can win an award for having really bad film taste. I'm messing, like what you like, but I strongly disagree with every film take you have in this chat. Okay, so I'm getting Blade Runner slander in the chat. So I will accept more criticism of the first Blade Runner than the second. So for me, and I think Blade Runner, the original, needs to be appreciated. I'm not saying you have to like the original Blade Runner. So for me personally, why I love the original Blade Runner is just like the whole vibe of it and the whole aesthetic. And on like a filmmaking level, I was watching it again recently. I watched it in the cinema actually because the Prince Charles Cinema are quite famous for like showing old films, doing a double bill of both Blade Runner films, and just that film still looks so good in the cinema. If you ever get the chance to go watch it, please go see it because like the first hour of the city in Blade Runner, the smoke and those crowds, and even when he goes to that bar, like it's when you watch that, you're like, filmmaking has gone so backwards. And if you watch like Once Upon a Time in America as well, which came out 2 years after Blade Runner, the use of physical sets and extras in these films it just adds so much to these movies. They make them feel so realistic, and it makes you feel like you're watching something real. Whereas nowadays, movies generally do not feel real. Like even if you're watching something which might have a scene similar to Once Upon a Time in America in like the Jewish community and stuff like that, or even the original Blade Runner, like these really packed cities, you just know, and you can tell from how it looks, it's just fake. Like you're watching computer generated images, whereas back in the day you could not fake it. So these movies just look insane, and I love getting so immersed in something, and that's why if you're going to watch Blade Runner for the first time, go in with the mindset of like you're not going to be entertained like a Marvel movie or conventional action movie or even like a drama or anything like that, because it was not designed to pull you along in that fashion. Blade Runner is a very like, I wouldn't say a boring film, but part of the enjoyment of it is the immersion. It's like really appreciating like the sets and the extras and the themes of the film and the soundtrack of the film and just how the audio sounds, like the dialogue and everything. So I think Blade Runner is like basically the appeal of it is the sum of its parts. If you go into Blade Runner thinking I'm going to be very entertained by this movie, it might not be for you. But if you go in saying like I'm going to try and appreciate this movie and like the vibe it's given me, like everyone who hasn't watched it, and if you go and watch Blade Runner, you will 100% notice the soundtrack. Like it's one of the best movie soundtracks of all time. It's one of the most influential films of all time, and you'll 100% appreciate the set design and how this movie looks at the very least. And then you might also like other parts of the film. And again, I'm not saying Blade Runner. Like I would never. I would say Blade Runner is probably one of the best movies of all time for like the sum of its parts. I wouldn't say for entertainment factor it's one of the best movies of all time. Where I say what Blade Runner 2049 does is it's actually a lot more entertaining to watch in that it has an interesting plot that pulls you along and makes you think things, while also having a lot of the elements of the first one, but also not as much as the first one. So I can understand why people like the first one better than the second. I think the second one has a more mass appeal and does have its own distinct feel and look. Although I would say, for its time, especially the original Blade Runner must have been like a very unique experience to see in 1982. So nearly 40 years old as well. So if you ever get a chance to go into cinema, if your cinema is showing the original Blade Runner, I totally recommend it for the experience. I'm not saying you're going to absolutely love this movie, but I think if you're like me and love like I call it like vibes, I always say this to my girlfriend, like something for me personally, I cannot really like something unless I enjoy the vibes of it. So for example, the new Dune movie is really good, and I really and like how I was talking about Blade Runner, I really appreciate the tangibility, I think the word is, of Dune. Like you can see the physical sets, you can see the models being used. You know this movie feels more realistic because it is being made more conventionally, like older movies. Same with Blade Runner 2049, where something like a Marvel movie just does not feel real. And even like with the Batman, I think it was the cinematographer is the same one from Dune, I'm pretty sure, and that feels more real. And I can understand why people, even if they don't like the Batman, would appreciate the Batman as a a piece of art and a movie compared to Marvel movies, even if it's not as good as certain Marvel movies. And that's what I think with the original Blade Runner, and to a lesser extent the second one, is what the mindset you have to go into these films with. So it's like, for me personally, I love the soundtrack, the look of it. Like I just love that vibe. Like on screen right now over there, I've got like a Blade Runner thing stuck up. Like what is it? It's a scene from a movie someone's made into like a moving image, and it's on my PC right now. On my TV right now. And then the same with Cyberpunk 2077. Like I love existing in that world, the soundtrack and everything like that. And even Assassin's Creed Valhalla, for me personally, like you guys will get this when you play a game, you get so immersed in it, and it gives you a certain feeling because it often has a certain vibe. And I say the best games have this. And Assassin's Creed Valhalla has this for me, like the scenery, the soundtrack. Cyberpunk has it. Horizon, I'm playing right now, that has it as well. The original Horizon has it. The Witcher has it. But not all games have this. And for me, I find it harder to get more immersed in a game or a movie if it doesn't have that pull for me. The fact that I can't even remember any of the Marvel soundtracks is like a big point against it, because that means it really hasn't immersed me with what it's doing, because it's so generic. I can't even remember any of it, and that's why I appreciate a bit more with the Marvel shows where they do have a certain vibe. Like Loki and WandaVision feel very, very different from each other, where I think a lot of the Marvel movies all feel very, very similar to each other, and they all blur into one. Especially the period of Marvel between like 2014 and 2018, I think is all very similar. Like Captain America movies, Avengers movies, and Spider-Man movies all feel exactly the same. Sorry, I'm just gonna read some more comments. Mr. Krabs, thanks so much for the $5. And also, 1972, Shonen manga Devilman is another lefty manga that is anti-war during the Vietnam War. And it also tackles the Red Scare. Oh, that sounds interesting. Has it been made into an anime, Mr. Krabs? Yeah, Brandon, I feel that, but Mandalorian is worth watching. Yeah, Tefan, the Jenny Nicholson video, Dear Evan Hansen, made me laugh a lot. You're not right about Blade Runner or the Batman. Mac, there are people who seriously believe that as well. Last of Us, yeah, that's a good example. Like I love the Last of Us world, and I love the feeling of like playing those games, even though they can be like extremely scary sometimes. No, you can say Blade Runner is boring. I mean, for some people it's boring. For me, it's not. Soundtrack and the visuals, yeah. Andrew saying Blade Runner 2049 is better than it has any right to be, considering most people thought a sequel would be pointless. Yeah, hats off to that. Yeah, exactly. We were talking about Blade Runner, yeah, for sure. Some would say it's dreadfully distinct. Yeah. What's that book? Pale Fire something? Vangelis is the goat man. Say his name. Yeah, I forgot to. No, the computer zoom scene. Carl, no way. I literally have a video saved on my playlist of that scene like on repeat. Like the computer scene in Blade Runner 1 and the DNA matching scene in the second one. Absolutely love those scenes. It's just like so like cozy, and like the noises of the machinery, like, oh man, love it. If you saw a turtle on its back, what would you do? I would. What was there was a really funny fucking meme. It was like Ted Cruz interviewing Mark Zuckerberg in the Senate, and it's just like he's asking like that question to him. Tears and Rain. Yeah, that's in the first one. It's better than the second one. Yeah, Rutger Hauer. Yeah, Skippy. I watched the original Blade Runner the day he died, like in memory of him and stuff, and it was such a great experience. It was like 4 years ago now, I think. Like to watch, or 3 years ago, to watch that and to think like this guy's just died, but this is such an iconic role for him. Like what he'll be remembered for was like really nice. Quebec gang, yeah. He said LA is influenced by Quebec in Blade Runner. Yeah, Lady Grey. I talked about Attack on Titan and the fascist stuff like a year ago. I know Vosh did a long ass video about it. I think he's watched it, so I don't really know, to be honest. Yeah, Sophita, I agree with that. Like the new Dune, obviously for someone like me, I'm going in blind, and it wasn't confusing really. Obviously, like I didn't know the lore, but it wasn't confusing. Yeah, Jonathan, someone's saying, am I looking forward to the Top Gun sequel? I actually am looking forward to the Top Gun sequel. Like I said in the past, because people often say, like, well, can you not like conservative films? Like Top Gun, in my mind, is a conservative film. Oliver Stone was actually meant to write it originally, but he backed out, and obviously completely different from what he would have done with it. And it drove up Navy recruitment insanely like high. But like it's just like a guilty pleasure, that movie, because it's so stupid, and like obviously like the soundtrack, Kenny Loggins soundtrack. I don't know. There's something about it I really like, and I'm hyped that seemingly somehow the sequel has loads of good actors in it as well. Like you got Miles Teller, Tom Cruise, obviously Ed Harris, and John Hamm are all in it. And is it Jennifer Connelly's in it as well? Like, how did it get? Is it going to be like very very seriously like that? I can imagine someone having the same reaction to that if it's really good that I had to the Blade Runner sequel. Lime Green, I think Dune is better than Prisoners, which I don't think is as good as people make out. So I'm just reading more comments. Oh yeah, Batman Beyond. I used to watch that when I was a kid. I didn't know that about Blade Runner influencing it though. Pale Fire. Yeah, I watched a good video about it actually. Forgot who the YouTuber is. They're really small, but they did a good comparing it to Blade Runner. No, I'm not into horror. The only horror I'm really into is like Resident Evil, but I still won't even play the newer ones because I'm too much of a little baby. Yeah, Sam Raimi is the new Doctor Strange movie, which is funny. I haven't seen the new Spider Man yet. I do need to see it because I absolutely love the Sam Raimi ones. Yeah, Lime Green. If you're interested, I talked about how disappointed I was in the politics of that show when it was over. I made a video on it somewhere, Yeah, salmon. The Karl Marx. There's a Karl Marx anime, but it's Chinese. I've seen some clips on YouTube. So I'm just reading some more comments. Interlinks. Yeah, I do love that scene as well. Actually, Cav read a message from about 10 minutes ago. My chat is updated. I think I'm not down the bottom now. So I'm just reading some more. Just rewatch the volleyball scene, and the song is called "Playing with the Boys." Is that the song that plays? Benjamin, I did not understand what that R place was on Reddit at all. So no. Professional wrestling, yeah, Super Luigi. I mean, the exploitation of the people involved is really shitty, but I've always not cared about it because it's staged, like it's fake, and I don't understand how like Sky Sports, which is like the big sport channel in the UK, like hypes it up like there's stakes in it. It's like also scripted. I don't know. I just don't care for it. Um, yeah, Benjamin King, but that's even though they bring back Sam Neill and Laura Dern, it does feel really cynical. Like it's like, hey, look, nostalgia, come watch our movie. Where like, I mean, Blade Runner did that a bit with Harrison Ford, but it's kind of like he is the main character, and the only people they brought back was Harrison Ford and I think Edward James Olmos, who played Gat, but he was only in it for like 1 minute, and then the person who played Rachel wasn't even in the movie. Um, so yeah, it does feel a bit cynical, even though I think it will make the movie better. I haven't seen MASH. I obviously know a lot about MASH because it came up a lot when I was doing Vietnam War at uni. So because obviously MASH was about the Korean War, but it was very relevant to the Vietnam War. Favorite Batman actor? I mean, Robert Pattinson's pretty good. Probably Christian Bale at the moment still, but I do like Robert Pattinson's Batman too. I'd say Kevin Conroy probably from the games and the shows. Oh, you're rewriting it. Yeah. Basically, Lime Green, my main criticism of the Winter Soldier show was the basically the Black Captain America from the Korean War. I said it would have been a better ending if he did not accept Sam becoming Captain America. And I think it would be like a nice contrast where you have like here is like this modern black man in America who, even though despite everything America does to black people, he accepts this role as like the face of this like new America. But then this other Captain America who was like tortured and put in prison and experimented on, he cannot accept that because of like how hard the past has hit him because he's like an old man, isn't he? So I thought it would be an interesting point to make that like yeah maybe some black people like Sam Wilson can move past this and embrace being an American patriot or whatever, but then there is always going to be that history there, and this is why this guy cannot accept Sam as Captain America. I think that would have been a nicer ending. I think him accepting him, I forgot what his name is, but him accepting Sam Wilson as Captain America, I think really undercut like any of that messaging in the show. Um, oh yeah, Limbo. What's the election looking like? Conservative win again. One good Jurassic Park movie, yeah, the first one. Yeah, Little Fox. Indie games aren't really my thing, especially PC indie games. I'm gonna play big budget PS5 exclusive or PS5 and PS4 exclusive Horizon after the stream. So um, Affleck's Batman was bad because the movies were bad. Yeah, Michael Keaton is playing Batman in the new Flash movie, I think. Yeah, it would be too political for Marvel, but if you're gonna talk about this shit in your show, maybe double down a bit more. I don't know. Cav is a stoner. I mean, I've never smoked weed in my life, but believe what you want. Um, who would be the villains, Lime Green? Um, the funny thing is, so no matter what you think of Oliver Stone, he is like insanely talented, and I listened to his audiobook of his autobiography, and it's really funny that he originally wrote Conan, the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie from the 80s. Like he originally wrote it, and then in in the book, I think he paid the studio who had it, or like they let him use some of his old script, and he like reads out his script for Conan, and it's really interesting to hear him talk about like there was a plan to make so many of these Conan movies, and it was like about him talking about the original author of Conan and stuff. Like it's really really interesting insight. So like Oliver Stone was basically meant to write everything in the 1980s, Top Gun and Conan, but he didn't in the end. Smoke ganja. I mean, I've never done it in my life. I'm definitely not doing it on stream. um. Oh, really? Limbo. That's interesting. But I know, yeah, like I know the Labour Party in Australia is rubbish as well. No beginner's guide for Kavernacle. Do we need a little guide for people? Um, so Neris, that's interesting because Ben Affleck for me has never been like a rom-com guy. He's always been like an action guy. Because what are the movies, or like a drama guy as well? Like what's that one with Robin Williams, Good Will Hunting, and then The Town, which is quite a good movie. The Town is a good movie, although it is just pretty much a rip off of Heat. Like it's so much like Heat, it's crazy. Um, yeah, Benjamin Kim, that was an interesting part of it, but then always like demonize the people who like make left wing arguments. Yeah, Platoon was really good. I do like Platoon a lot. Like a lot of problems with the same like American centrism of these like war movies always focuses on the Americans and how they felt, not that they were completely destroying another person's country. Ramet Green, thanks so much. I hope you enjoyed the intro if you understood it. um, Cream Hog. I'm glad some of you remember fucking Cream Hog. Yeah, Gone Girl. Affleck was good as well. That's a good movie. Great soundtrack by Trent Reznor. Um, oh, did I even mention Vosh? Oh, I said he did a video on whatever that anime was because I only saw it pop up in my suggested ones. Sorry, just reading some more stuff. Armageddon, yeah, I saw him at Armageddon. That's what I forgot. Pearl Harbor and Armageddon, yeah, and Argo. So for me, he was always like a drama action guy. Yeah, I haven't seen Oliver Stone's Nixon. I do really like Natural Born Killers, which is really funny because Woody Harrelson's dad was actually a serial killer who might have been involved in JFK's assassination, which is really strange for him to play a serial killer. And I think the character the character Woody Harrelson plays in what's that movie with Javier Bardem as the bad guy? Shit, what's it called? No, it's like one. It's like one three four lines four words. What's it called? The one where he's a serial killer chasing Josh Brolin. Shit, someone's gonna tell me in the comments. But apparently the character he plays in that is inspired by someone who knew his dad, which is weird. No Country for Old Men. Yeah, yeah. Oliver Stone's JFK is good as well, for sure. No Country for Old Men. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Veins. I don't know how long you've been subscribed to me. I used to host Mario Kart and Tetris 99 lobbies just before Christmas. I will probably stream this weekend at some point. I was going to stream some games on Sunday, but I just couldn't be able to set up my Switch and whatever the fucking thing's called that you can play it on stream. Ted Cruz's dad, yeah. Yeah, Natural Born Killers. There's a scene, and I've included it in one of my videos. I think it's about Kenneth Copeland. I can include it. Like Woody Harrelson goes like, "Oh, like it brought out the demon in me," and like Robert Downey Jr. just like looks really excited. He's like, "The demon," and Robert Downey Jr. in Natural Born Killers. That like if you guys are like a moderate fan of Robert Downey Jr. and you haven't seen Natural Born Killers, it is for me like by far his best role. Like it is, he's absolutely so fucking funny in that movie, and like it's not like it's a kind of like black comedy role, but like he's not meant to be funny, but he's meant to be this Australian like television journalist, news anchor, whatever, and he's so good in it. Like he's good as Iron Man. He's like good in Tropic Thunder. He's good in some movies, but like this is like peak Robert Downey Jr. Obviously, I think it was before he was clean as an addict and stuff like that. But like he's so fucking good in that movie. Just watch that movie for Robert Downey Jr. Like his line, it's so quotable and it's just so funny to watch. Like can't believe he didn't win an Oscar or something for it. It's so good. And Natural Born Killers was originally written, the vague overall story was written by Quentin Tarantino, but Oliver Stone came in and they really didn't get on well, and then Quentin Tarantino left and Oliver Stone basically rewrote the whole thing. So Quentin Tarantino, I think there's something about him in the credits, like maybe like story by Quentin Tarantino, but Oliver Stone did write, direct, and basically edit the whole thing. Streams are cancelled. Hey, Sneed Mando, what's going on? Don't shoot, Wayne. Get and fucking when Robert Downey Jr. gets the gun himself and helps the criminals escape the prison. Oh my god, so good! I fucking love that performance. So fucking funny. Yeah, JT Oliver Stone. Like it's sad. Like he stopped making proper movies. Like I like respect him for doing documentaries and like interviewing like Hugo Chavez and Fidel Castro and stuff. But like I don't know. Like some of those movies, man. Like he was still doing good stuff in the 90s, and I don't know why he really dialed it back a lot. Like Wall Street's good. Platoon, Born the 4th of July is good. Like you like saying Nixon's good. Natural Born Killers is good. JFK is really good. So yeah. Yeah, Joe Pesci and JFK. JFK is a good movie. I fucking. Do you know what I was thinking about the other day? Donald Sutherland is a really fucking good actor. As Kiefer Sutherland's dad, obviously he's in fucking loads and loads of movies, and he's obviously still acting as well. I was just thinking Donald Sutherland is better than Kiefer Sutherland. I only have a bit of love for Kiefer Sutherland because he plays Snake in Metal Gear Solid 5, and he plays Roebuck in Cold War at War. Do you have golf with friends? Is that a game? Get back and to the right. What are we talking about? Yeah, Cormac McCarthy wrote the book. I don't know if he wrote the movie. Sorry, I'm just watching some more stuff. Mongolian throat singing, yeah, Mongolian throat singing in Dune and Blade Runner 2049. Didn't Stone write Scarface? Yeah, Jane. If anyone is interested in Oliver Stone's life, seriously, his autobiography is absolutely fascinating. Like, and he's also, as someone who's an amazing screenwriter, it's written in an amazing way. Like, even no matter what you think of him today and his politics and stuff, he follows me on Instagram actually. Yeah, his book, like, I highly, if you love film and history, you've just gotta read this book, and I would recommend listening to it because he does some funny voices from some of the characters. Like he's literally, Oliver Stone is like at the center of film and world history because he's like his dad was on General Eisenhower's staff for World War II. Like his dad literally was one of the top people in his staff during the Second World War. And then his mum lived in Nazi occupied Paris. His granddad fought in World War One for France. He taught in South Vietnam as a teacher. Then he went over as a soldier, did 2 tours of Vietnam, comes back, goes to Mexico, tries to bring loads of weed over the border to America, gets stuck in prison for months, comes out of prison, goes to live in New York, goes to film school where his teacher is Martin Scorsese, and his acting teacher is Frank Langella, and Martin Scorsese like praised his short film about Vietnam. Then he's like basically like no money, and then he writes Platoon. but then people like it in the industry, but they'll never make it because it's too critical of Vietnam. And then he writes like Midnight Express, but he's a massive drug addict. So then he does it. He wins an Oscar and a Golden Globe for Midnight Express, and he's like so high on Quaaludes, and you can't even remember what he said. But then it's just amazing him talking about the Oscars because it has like John Wayne there, Jimmy Stewart, but also having like all the modern famous actors like Robert De Niro, Al Pacino. And he's like, it's like a crossover between golden age Hollywood and like new age Hollywood. And then just talking about like meeting with, Michael Caine, having like this relationship with Al Pacino, talking about Scarface and meeting all these drug gangs and like being addicted to cocaine with his wife while writing it. And yeah, it's just absolutely fascinating life. And then talking about finally getting Vietnam or Platoon made and how that was made is fucking hilarious. Like how like it's just crazy how he made that film in Salvador. So yeah, seriously, it's called, I think it's called Chasing the Light. It covers his life between his birth and 1989 when he wins the Oscar for best picture for Platoon and best director. Um, I'm probably gonna read it again because it's just like so enjoyable to like get this behind the curtains look at like history and the history of Hollywood by someone who is like very influential. Um, but yeah, Meow Neon, thanks so much for another super chat, $7. Fun fact: Kiefer Sutherland's grandpa is the father of Canadian healthcare. Tommy Douglas. Watch JJ McCullough complain about it. That's really, really interesting. Is it Keith? I'm guessing it's not Donald Sutherland's dad. It's Kiefer Sutherland's mum's dad. That's really cool, actually. So really famous family right there. I didn't know he's Canadian. Like, is it just his grandparents who are Canadian, or is he Canadian? Yeah, Charlie Sheen was obviously Wall Street and Platoon, but Emilio Estevez from the Mighty Ducks was actually meant to play Chris Taylor in Platoon, but he got too old. And that's actually really funny because Martin Sheen starred on Apocalypse Now, and Martin Sheen, funnily enough, like because of that experience, he really didn't want Charlie Sheen to do Platoon 10 years later. So they had to have like loads of meetings with Martin Sheen to like reassure him like it wouldn't be like Apocalypse Now. And if you guys don't know about Apocalypse Now and the filming of it, apparently there's a really good documentary about it. Hopefully there's a film of it one day, like a proper Hollywood film. But it's absolutely crazy, like how they film those movies. Yeah, Eve Online to me, Manda. The only thing I like about Eve Online is this track called Red Glowing Dust, which I have on my SoundCloud because I listen to that. Yeah, Jane Creek. Seriously, read it. I'm convinced I could get Oliver Stone on my YouTube channel because he went on someone I know's YouTube channel, which is about 10 times smaller. But I'm just scared to ask, really, even though I have him on Instagram, so we can DM. All right, one sec. I'm just gonna go to the toilet quick. I've been drinking a lot of water today. All right, so let's ask you a question quick for the chat. All right, here's a fun question. Answer me this while I just go to the bathroom for about 2 minutes. What is worse? So I like the prequel movies. I know a lot of people don't like the prequel movies. So what is worse? The prequel Star Wars movies, the Hobbit trilogy, or the Fantastic Beast trilogy, or just the two Fantastic Beast films, right? So what is the worst out of those? And maybe leave a little detail why one is worse than the other. Okay. Go chat, go. Answer me that question. Okay. What have the people said? All right. What is the worst? Oh, you guys really got in there. Okay. Oh fuck! So many comments. One sec. All right. Fantastic Beasts movies, Hobbit, Fantastic Beasts. There's more than one. Yeah, there's three now. Fantastic Beasts, Hobbit. Okay, people were hating the Hobbit and Fantastic Beasts a lot more. Only seen the prequel movies. Okay, that's fair enough. Ian McKellen was still. Yeah, that was cool to see all of them back. Actually, to be fair. Hobbit says Meow Nian. First hint that WB can't handle large multi-film franchises. Well, the Hobbit is an absolute mess anyway because Peter Jackson wasn't even meant to direct them. Prequels, no, Carl, no way. The prequels are good. Hobbit fucking sucks. I haven't seen Fantastic Beasts. I don't mind the first two Hobbit movies. I actually quite like the second one. The third one is bad. It reminds me of episode 9, actually. Like, the thing with The Hobbit, how can you make a movie about a tiny book and still cut stuff? Like, why can't I see Bilbo go back to all these places he visited? Like, that's a massive part of the book. Ramic, that is extreme. Darth Maul and flipping Yoda equals better than trash. Yeah. Yeah, prequels there, Darth Maul, great memes, that saves them. Yeah. The Star Wars prequels now get a lot of love. Yeah, I like them. I like them. Prequels also gave a dope expanded universe. Yep, I agree. Yeah, Fantastic Beasts doesn't have a logical continue. Oh, I can't even say that word right now. But yeah, I agree. The Hobbit sucks. Sorry, my chat just went down. Prequels are not good, but they have a high concept that's done badly, but it's there. And Ewan McGregor and the memes, and The Hobbit has Ian McKellen. It still has good things. Yeah, I guess I agree with that. Dutch City died. Yeah, that was sad in the Clone Wars. Yeah, Benjamin. I think the Lord of the Rings show looks bad. Not for any of the reasons reactionaries think, but I just think it looks quite shit. I think Ray's just a bit boring. Prequels are a W. Yep, I agree. Okay, hot take for The Hobbit. I kind of like the Ed Sheeran song at the end of number 2, and I do enjoy Legolas in The Hobbit 2 as well. As ridiculous as he is, like punching goblins and stuff. All right, so thanks for your input, everyone. I did promise I'd probably go over this, but I'll read it for you now. So there's still a lot of you in here, and I said I would talk about Fantastic Beasts. So apparently, according to this article, Warner Brothers might drop Fantastic Beasts. Apparently, it hasn't done like amazing at the box office either, and they just think the controversy with Ezra Miller now, and also J.K. Rowling, it's just not worth it. Like it's too much. So I'm gonna try and find the quote specifically. There's a quote about them being kind of sick of it. Okay, so this is their Star Wars franchise. You expect more, says exhibitor relations analyst, Jeff Bock, in reference to Disney's premier franchise. This is supposed to be a crown jewel, and it's not behaving like one. Warner Brothers declined to comment. For Warner Brothers, Harry Potter is one of the 2 flagship franchises with DC, intended to prop up the studio's film strategy in an era where streaming services have fashioned themselves as major rivals to traditional players. Ezra Miller was arrested, which took place nearly 2 years after footage surfaced of the actor appearing to choke a woman outside a bar in Iceland, adds to the troubles that have mounted since the original was greenlit. Given the lackluster reception for 2018's The Crimes of Grindelwald, Warner Brothers initially postponed filming in 2019 to retool the third movie rather than churn out follow-ups on an assembly line. During the same period, Harry Potter creator J.K. Rowling went from beloved author to deeply polarizing figure due to, obviously, her crusade against trans rights. Last week, Warner Media chairman Ann Sarnoff, who was responsible for overseeing the larger Harry Potter universe, was ushered out of the company ahead of its merger with Discovery. and talking about other internal problems. Audiences don't really seem to like the series after frequent complaints from moviegoers about tangled plotting and overabundance of characters and not enough meaningful connection to the deeply admired books. Oh, sorry, you guys can't see this as well as I can. One sec. There you go. Warner Brothers took painstaking steps to retool the story and recapture the charm of the original saga. This meant hiring screenwriter Steve Kloves, who penned the 7 Harry Potter movies, to co-write Fantastic Beasts 3 with Rowling. And all these movies basically play into my point that Rowling is not actually a good writer. The Harry Potter books aren't actually that good as like written books, but the movies are really good, and that's genuinely what I believe. It also involved relegating once prominent characters like Catherine Waterston's Tina Goldstein to the fringes in favour of elevating the screen time of Jude Law's Dumbledore and Mickelson's Grindelwald, but it hasn't entirely helped. Variety's chief film critic Peter DeBrudge called the latest entry a vastly improved sequel, but for the most part, the secrets of Dumbledore haven't been particularly well received. There's been franchises that have been hit with problems, but not like this, said Stephen Galloway, the dean of Chapman University Film School. This is a confluence of events that does not bode well. At the box office, Fantastic Beasts was commercially successful, grossing about $800 million, but the follow-up only had $650 million. The upcoming Secrets of Dumbledore faces a fraught movie-going landscape since COVID-19 upended the theatrical business. Only 5 Hollywood movies have generated at least $500 million. That means that, beloved or not, Fantastic Beasts 3 will struggle. Talking about like Dumbledore being gay, being censored in China, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE, and it won't play in Russia. So just reading some more. There's one more quote I wanted to read here. So declining box office ticket sales suggests that Fantastic Beasts hasn't charmed the fans or converted young kids into aspiring witches and wizards. That has reverberating effects on the larger wizarding world, which has become much more than a film franchise. There are theme parks in Japan and Orlando and Hollywood, as well as live events and studio tours. And obviously, Harry Potter and the Cursed Child played in London, and it's going to be in Broadway, or it is in Broadway. So it's talking about J.K. Rowling and Ezra Miller and Johnny Depp. But there's one more bit I wanted to read. And it's about the actors like Jude Law and Eddie Redmayne, obviously, apparently being supportive of trans rights, but then keep getting asked about it because of J.K. Rowling. All right, so here's one thing like I was reading about as well. So analysts believe Warner Brothers could save face by returning to reliable favourites. Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone director Chris Columbus expressed an interest in adapting the Cursed Child stage show, which picks up after the Deathly Hallows and centers on Ron, Hermione, and their children. Potter and company could also find new life on streaming, though nothing official is in the works. There are early conversations about a Harry Potter-related TV show for HBO Max. Yeah, but generally there's like a lot of other people speculating as well. There's another one here that all these controversies are essentially going to doom the whole series, which is meant to be 5 movies, remember. Apparently it used to be 6 movies as well. And the problem for me is there are movies that have very controversial stories or controversial actors, but then they kind of come together and work as really decent movies. I'm trying to think of like the biggest modern example. Obviously, we're talking about Apocalypse Now earlier, which obviously was a total mess. I think The Godfather was a bit of a mess as well. I'm trying to think of like a more modern example. Could anyone think in the chat of a modern film? Rogue One was a total mess. The filming of that apparently was like really chaotic, and they like reshot so much of it and cut loads of stuff out. There's another film like that was World War Z was another one. I'm trying to think of like a really good one which has had like loads of controversy. I can't really think of one at the moment. But yeah, for me personally, like especially with the Ezra Miller stuff, I don't know what happens to his character in this film, although he died in the first one and came back in the second one, which was really weird. And obviously, like J.K. Rowling become more notorious. Like today, she was posting pictures of her posing with the LGB Alliance, which is a transgender hate group in the UK. Basically, I think they have like as part of their manifesto, like eliminating transgenderism, because they believe something bizarre about that. Okay, I was reading today. It's like they think that women transition to men to escape the patriarchy or some absolute crazy shit like that. So she's been hanging out with loads of these types lately, even though she used to say she was an ally for trans people, but just apparently compared about like liberal feminism or some crap like that. So especially with people like Eddie Redmayne, who actually played like a trans woman and then said they really regretted it because, you know, it's 2015 and they said it's bad taste looking back. I can't see these people sticking around for too long, some of them, but yeah, like if you have all this drama and controversy attached to your brand and making people actively hate Harry Potter, like how many people are saying they're not, you know, I've seen video game outlets saying, not like the mainstream ones, they're not going to even cover the new Harry Potter game because of J.K. Rowling and stuff. And that's just crazy. And like there isn't this controversy, and like you have something like The Mandalorian, and then obviously Gina Carano is controversial, but then they just kind of get rid of her. But then you'd think if they're just obsessed with making money, wouldn't you just bin this Fantastic Beasts series? And it's just crazy. It started off as like Fantastic Beasts, and now it's just like the Dumbledore prequel. It's really, really strange. Just going to read some comments from you guys. Solo, yes, Solo was another one. That was an okay movie. Nah, Suicide Squad was just crap, but like I think it would have been crap anyway. I want to read you this article in a sec, but I'll take some more comments first. Based Miyazaki. One sec. I wish I had like a more condensed version of this, but I'll just read you this in a sec. The Event Horizon show. I've never seen Event Horizon. It looks too fucking. Apparently, it's absolutely horrific. So I've never watched it, despite really liking sci-fi. Wait, is Ezra Miller non-binary? I must have missed this. Mads Mikkelsen should play the part of Credence. Unironically, Mads Mikkelsen's best performance is the last half an hour of Death Stranding. Oh, I didn't know that. When did Ezra Miller come out? Event Horizon is too horrific. The cool thing about Event Horizon was Sam Neill having like a new Australian flag with like indigenous stuff on it. I haven't seen the second Suicide Squad. The concept of the Suicide Squad just really doesn't appeal to me in the slightest. Mads was a good Hannibal. Yeah, I haven't watched Hannibal because again the concept is just gross. Yeah, Gazokes. That was the fucking worst. Like when Han Solo got his name, why he can just be called Han Solo? Why the fuck do you have to explain where Solo comes from? When are you going to propose to Kojima? Never. Kojima is like you don't need to read any leftist theory. You just need to play Metal Gear Solid. 100%. It's got you covered for everything. All right, so I wanted to read you this. So basically, here's a little teaser for my video tomorrow. So also, anyone who's German in the chat, and I don't think there's any of you, what's the deal with German leftists being really shit and Japanese leftists being really cool, despite the fact like Japan as a society hasn't wasn't forced to reconcile what they did in World War II compared to the Germans, but German leftists are really crap generally, in my opinion. Little Fox, thanks so much for the five Australian. Cab and everyone else, you need to watch Kaylee and Conrad's video on the gender critical cult. It's really informative. I've never heard of this person before. Are they like a prominent left wing YouTuber? Or is it just a up and coming person? Yeah, I want to watch Valhalla Rising because I like Nick Refn stuff. Also, speaking of like Mads and like Nick Refn, has anyone watched Too Old to Die Young on Amazon? Miles Teller and John Hawke, and I think that's the only famous people in it. A lot of German leftists are pro-Israel. Lots of former Soviet. Yeah, a lot of German leftists are pro-Israel. So I'm just reading some more comments. Okay, I'll let you comment for a bit. So basically, yeah, tomorrow's video, I was going to talk about the like the Disney being woke. Like how anti-SJWs have always said that Disney is woke, and it's like bizarre belief that corporations don't exist to make money anymore. Obviously, it's taken on a more sinister tone because they're saying that Disney is promoting like groomers or some shit because it has LGBT representation or some crap like that. So I was gonna make that tomorrow, but I thought I might as well strike while the iron is hot with this because it's something I want to talk about a bit more. So basically, I made a video in January about like the Japanese Communist Party and like why the American far right love Japan, but how there's actually a pretty strong left wing movement in Japan as well. Like biggest. I think it's like probably one of the most, maybe outside of like Greece and shit. Like it's one of the biggest non-ruling communist parties in the world in Japan, and actually, although minor, is electoral force. So there actually are a lot of Japanese leftists. A lot of them are pacifists. A lot of them hate the U.S. militarism in Japan and just general Japanese militarism. So a lot of Japanese artists, manga, anime, and in my experience, video games, have left wing messages. And the funny thing is, there's always those memes. It's like American video game developers saying that there's no politics in our games, and then you have like Hideo Kojima saying like, yeah, Death Stranding's a response to Trump and Brexit. So I'll read some comments before I read these quotes. Basically, Miyazaki, the Studio Ghibli guy, has recently come out and criticized American cinema in a really funny way. So I want to read that in a sec, but let me just see what you guys are saying. Yeah, Labour's Israel simping is disgusting. Keir Starmer basically just said that Israel isn't an apartheid state. He said that like this week, I think. Wait, I asked a question about Too Old to Die Young. Has anyone watched it? Dark and unpredictable. I think James, you're talking about it. Yeah, it's really fucked up. I really like it in some ways. It is a bit too self-indulgent for Nick Refn. Also Hideo Kojima is actually in the show as like a very very minor like samurai character. It's pretty funny. Yeah, Labour is dead when it comes to left-wing principles. I agree. Just reading some more. I mean, they're probably better than British ones because Germany has better unions. Okay, just read some more comments. I've seen the Kojima finger scene. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Benjamin, I don't really care to be honest because they've been fined for breaking the law, which we all know they see you later, Gazooks, which we all know they broke anyway, and they're not going to resign because apparently the Tories are not going to force them out. Rishi Sunak should resign because of the fucking tax shit anyway. Like legit should resign for that, and I hope he does get forced out. Okay, let's talk about these quotes quick because these make me fucking laugh. Especially as someone who's been talking about. Wait, is this article old? Oh, it's an old article which has come out again. So wait, is this? Oh, it's an old one, but it's just doing the rounds lately. So it came out like a couple of years ago. Okay, so Heyo, is this how do you say it? Heyo? Or how do Yayo? Is it Heyo? Someone tell me. Chris Bennett. Oh my god, thanks so much for the 20 American dollars. That's so nice of you. Bread Sword made a great video about Howl's Moving Castle was Miyazaki's criticism of the Iraq War. All right, I'm copying your comment quick. Thanks so much for the $20. That's amazing. So I've got it up on screen in front of me, but you guys can't see it. Oh, nice. Protest of Iraq War. Thanks for sharing that. Sorry, let me get your name. Thanks for sharing that, Chris. Really appreciate that. That's the exact sign of shit I was looking for. I don't know if any of you have linked me that on Twitter because I was asking for examples of this stuff. So just knowing he has a whole thing about the Iraq War is really helpful. So yeah, Chris, thanks so much for $20, and I really appreciate the suggestion. Hopefully, it's something I'll be using in tomorrow's video, which I probably need to research a bit more tonight. But yeah, thanks so much, Chris. Hey Yao, hi yo. Okay, how do you? Okay, does anyone speak Japanese in the chat? So people say someone's saying hi yo, someone else saying hi yao, hi yao, hi yo. Okay, who fucking can pronounce it? Someone give me the definitive. How do we say this? Hey Yao or Hi Yao or Hi or whatever the fuck is the narrative saying. Can someone help me, please? Everyone's saying no. Shrek is underrated, as for sure. Hi Yayo. Hi Yao. Hi Yao is closer. I'm Japanese. Okay, thanks so much, Gongoose. Gongoose is got the definitive take. Hi Yao. Hi Yao. Hi Yao. Io. Hi Yao. Hi Yao. Hi Yao. Hey Yao. Hey Yao. Okay, Sophia, thanks for helping. I'm gonna take Gongoose's one because they say they're Japanese. Hey Yao. Wait, but Gongo says it's hi Yao. Yeah, I'm Gongoose. I'm taking your hi Yao. Miyazaki. Okay, this is an old article. May like many things, but Lord of the Rings movies and Indiana Jones are not among them. In an interview that dates back from a few years, Miyazaki not only criticized Hollywood's, but those who enjoy its films. The interview has recently been appearing on major Japanese blogs. Kotaku has not confirmed the interview in its original hard copy form, but here are apparently more expert excerpts from the same interview. Miyazaki says, Americans shoot things and they blow up and they like it and the like. So as you'd expect, they make movies like that. If someone is the enemy, it's okay to kill endless numbers of them, he continued. Lord of the Rings is like that. If it's the enemy, there's killing without separation between civilians and soldiers. That falls within collateral damage. How many people being killed in attacks in Afghanistan? The Lord of the Rings is a movie that has no problem doing that, not separating civilians from enemies. Apparently, I don't know if this is really relevant for Lord of the Rings, but okay, I take his point. If you read the original work, you'll understand, but in reality, the ones who are being killed are Asians and Africans. Yep, I totally agree with that because I made a whole video on that. Those who do not know that yet say they love fantasy are idiots. So basically, if you don't understand what he's saying here, Tolkien simps have come at me in the comments because they get mad about this. Basically, there is racism in Lord of the Rings, not because Tolkien was like ideologically some fervent white supremacist or something. It's just more like the colonialism of the British Empire seeping into his work. There's something called martial races, and it's the belief that like certain races of people and groups of people are predisposed to violence and war, and that's why they must be commanded by like white colonialists. So like I don't know, Gurkhas from the pole or Indian Muslim or Hindu troops that the British used to command. And basically, Tolkien has said that the orcs are inspired. I think it's by the Huns or by the. I think it's by the Huns, who obviously like Asian nomads from the 400s, like Attila the Hun and stuff. And I think there's some other influence there as well. So yeah, that's what he's referring to here. And then he goes on to say, the article says Miyazaki's grouping of Lord of the Rings in with the American military seems slightly baffling. I mean, yeah, it's not the best example, but then he goes on to say, even in the Indiana Jones movies, there's a white guy who bangs, shoots people, right? Japanese people who go along and enjoy it. Enjoy with that are unbelievably embarrassing. You are the ones that bang get shot. Watching those movies without any self-awareness is unbelievable. There's no pride, no historical perspective. You don't know how you're viewed by a country like America. So basically, he's making the point that while Japanese audiences are enjoying Indiana Jones killing primarily Nazis, but sometimes Russians as well, they're not realizing they're like enjoying and cheering for the movies that were at the same time dehumanize Japanese people as like a constant enemy for America, I guess. And I guess in this scene is killing an Arab person. So Miyazaki has previously made critical comments about the US, writing, "I dislike the United States that dropped nuclear bombs and does not regret it." He added that it was adding that he was against Americanization and hated people who are proud that cheap Japanese cars are popular in America. And I look at people who wear badges of the US Army and US Air Force that filled Vietnam with dioxins as enemies. He also claimed to be anti-jeans, anti-bourbon, and anti-burgers, anti-fried chicken, anti-cola, anti-American coffee. Anti-New York, anti-West Coast, Disneyland, go back to America. All right, Miyazaki absolutely fucking hates America. I mean, I don't blame any Japanese person who hates America. Like, obviously you do have the war, but then you have the nuclear bombs, and then you have the medical experimentation on the survivors of the nuclear bombs, and then of course America until Obama never apologized for dropping the nukes. Yeah, and then obviously American occupation just after the war, American military bases in Japan kind of doing a lot of what America says in its foreign policy. But then it is kind of funny, he just hates all of American culture. I guess Miyazaki must have been a consultant on Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain, which talks about like cultural imperialism through language. That's what Skullface talks about a lot. And it's just interesting. But this is why I like Japanese leftists, because here's a country, specifically as a non-Western country, which has had a Western culture imposed on them in many ways through the American presence and the American conquest of the Japanese Empire and the American occupation of Japan post-war, and America essentially designing Japan's political system as well. So it's like a very interesting perspective, because with Germany, you have the cultural links between Germany and the United States, because Germany obviously have cultural links with most of Northern Europe. Lots of the United States is like founding groups were Northern Europeans. So Germany's post-war does not really mind the American influence, but Japan and Japanese culture traditionally versus Western European and American culture is very, very different. So when you have this American, I guess, cultural imperialism on Japan, it's not surprising, along with the military occupation there and the current military bases in Japanese territory, that a lot of Japanese people, which people need to understand, this applies to Korean people as well, like Psy from Gangnam Style, hates the American bases in Korea as well. That a lot of these people are not grateful. Like they don't like worship America because it pumped them for like a bit, pumped them full of money immediately after the war and stuff. It doesn't like America for like protecting them from North Korea and China and things like that. A lot of these people, I wouldn't exactly call them nationalists, although there probably are some. They hate America because they've imposed themselves on Japan in a lot less organic way. It's not like just through globalization, it's through direct military presence and government presence in Japan. So it's funny because Kojima shares a sentiment a lot as well. And it's something that a lot of Japanese socialists and leftists, they do still see America as like their number one enemy. And I think for a lot of people, and I think this is getting lost at the moment because of the Ukraine stuff, are people forgetting that our global economic system was designed by the United States in the dying days of the end of the World War II. IMF and World Bank, they started in 1944. If you are an anti-capitalist, America is your primary enemy. And we talk about like Russia, Who created that Russian system? Who had the major hand in creating the current Russian system? IMF and America, right? So, in my mind, if you're an anti-capitalist, the number one enemy in the world is still America. I still think America is the worst country on earth in terms of its impact around the world, and people might dispute that now because you see like what Russia is doing to Ukraine, and it's obviously very, very visible, very terrible. The same with what it did in Chechnya, same what it did in Georgia is a way lesser extent to what it's doing compared to Ukraine. But you get what I'm saying. Like Russian military offensives are very like what's the word? They don't even pretend to give a shit about civilian casualties. Like you know how America kind of pretends to care about civilian casualties, and there is like some sort of process to not kill civilians. It's pretty clear Russian military historically does not even attempt that. Like it's clear in Syria, it's clear in Afghanistan back in the day, and it's clear in Ukraine. The Russian military historically does not give a shit at all about even pretending to care about civilian lives and stuff. It will just kill civilians, and this happens in all of its wars. I don't know since the 1980s. So it's very easy to think, well, Russia is the worst because look at them now. And the thing is as well, I always say like if Russia was America, for example, like its power, I'm sure Russia would be worse. And it's not that Russia can't be worse, but the problem is if we're like comparing things, the thing with Russia is its whole existence as a superpower relies on its military, which is being found out right at the moment because it can't even like properly subdue Ukraine. But Russia's superpower status is literally just based on its oil, gas, and military, where the US's superpower status is based on having one of the most advanced militaries in all humankind and having its hands through its involvement in capitalism in nearly every region of the world, as along with its military bases as well. Like military bases in Japan, Korea, military bases in like all over Europe, military bases all over Africa. Like the US reach is absolutely massive, but it's also the economic side as well. For example, the US decides who gets sanctioned and who doesn't, primarily because the US is the top world economy. I still say it's still a bit ahead of China. So you have a country like Nicaragua who, like a couple of years ago, bought Russian weapons and they get sanctions on them. But then India does that and doesn't get sanctions on them because India is more important to the US to keep on side. So they don't care that India buys weapons from Russia, despite the fact that the US have passed like some sort of law that they will sanction countries that buy weapons from Russia. And that just shows you like the economic power the US has is still unparalleled. And you know, one day China might be the biggest superpower. One day China might have the role of the US, and then China might be worse than the US in this instance. And the problem is sometimes, even if I would take anyone's point that Russia and China are worse countries domestically, that still does not translate to their influence on the world. And the US influence on the world is far more like cohesive, militaristic than a country like China. That's just, even if China was a million times worse than the US, and I'm not even someone who's saying it is, you cannot debate that the Chinese influence on the world is not the same as the American influence on the world, right? Like things like Israel and Saudi Arabia, they get away with their war crimes every single day because the US props them up. That's just, the US backs them in the UN. The US ensures none of these countries face justice ever. The US in the past ensured most of the Axis in World War II, who they captured, never faced justice. In Japan, in Germany, in Greece. So the US has this power that none of these countries have. Like, can you imagine China and Russia organizing a boycott of America for the Iraq War? If say like America invaded Iran tomorrow, can you imagine China and Russia organizing the same sort of cultural and economic boycott that the West has done on Russia? They could not do that, but the US can do that, and that's the difference between them. So someone like Kojima and Miyazaki, focusing their energy on America might come out of something like they're Japanese, so they have experienced firsthand, you know, the cultural influence of America, and they don't like it. But then you have to look at it a bit further. That if you are an anti-capitalist, America still is your main enemy. And one day that might be Russia, one day that could be China, but at the moment it's not. It's America is your number one enemy. And countries like Russia were, capitalist Russia was enabled by America and created in part by America. It's taken on a life of its own, but even the Russian oligarchs, right? How much are Russian oligarchs over the last 20 years, really central in especially the British economy, and all their money is like whitewashed in England and London. So that's why I kind of like Japanese leftists, because with German leftists, a lot of the time, or maybe like more German lib leftists, it's like pro NATO, pro US, pro Israel, or like not massively pro US, but like US versus Russia, US is better. Whereas for me, it's always like Russia is a bit irrelevant in the conversation about like who's an anti-capitalist main enemy, because it's the US that dominates the economic institutions, as well as having this global military presence which enforces the economic institutions. Like, I don't know exactly what happened in Pakistan, but just the speculation that like it could be the US, and we know Pakistan has been allying itself more with China and Russia lately. So just even the speculation that the US could have a hand in that coup, and it has had hands in Pakistani coups in the past because of their actions and stuff. So it's just for me personally, that's why I find Japanese communism and leftism, even though the communism is a bit more liberal than like other communism found in other parts of the world, I do find it appealing is that they still recognize both the cultural imperialism, the economic imperialism, and the militarism of the US as the world's first evil. And the thing is, I say the US is a broad term because I know the US has its lackeys in like the UK primarily is the biggest lackey, UK, Israel, Saudi Arabia to some extent. But like, I say the US as like maybe like a stand-in for like the West and stuff. And it's just like a nuanced point that people can't seem to understand, because like, I don't even think we need to even get into the domestic parts of it, because we can argue all day who has a worse domestic system in terms of how it treats its own people, the United States or China. And you can have, I think you can have like a very legit argument about the pros and cons of both countries versus each other. But if we're talking about like their influence on the world, there is really no debate that it's the American influence on the world is far more destructive than any other country. And it's been that way since the end of the Cold War. And if you're an anti-capitalist leftist, there's no way you can argue with me that somehow I should be supporting America because Russia is bad, or I should be supporting America because China is bad. But I think this is a problem. I've actually heard a lot of American leftists say this. They're like, if I have to choose between Russia, China, and America, I'm choosing America. And I'm always like, why? Why? Well, first of all, why do you have to make that choice? Like, I don't understand. Is anyone making you choose that? And if this is a hypothetical, I've always said my choice would be, if I have to have a world full of superpowers, I'd want more of them. So I'd have the EU independent of America, UK, Canada, and the US, that's one block. EU is another block. Russia, India, Brazil, maybe South Africa, emerging economies, that's another block. Maybe Latin America, that's another block. African Union, that's another block. The Gulf, that's another block. And China, that's another block. So you have, in my mind, it would be, if we have to have a superpower dominated world, I'd rather have more, influences being spread around, where what we got at the moment is China, Russia kind of like a minor power on its own, United States dominating Europe, and North America, and Latin America and Africa kind of being irrelevant, while the Gulf is also aligned with American interests for the most part, until you start pissing them off about oil. So it's like, I don't understand why anyone thinks that America is a better choice globally than, and the thing is, people get influenced too much by Eastern European countries who love NATO being like, well, yeah, we prefer America compared to Russia. Well, that's obviously understandable in their situation, but if we're talking about on a global scale for all the peoples of the world, like people in Africa, people in Latin America, people in other parts of the world, of course, people in Eastern Europe who are scared of being invaded by Russia will prefer NATO and the United States, but that is like a minority compared to the rest of the world, who, I'm not saying they would prefer Russia or China, but they hate the United States for what they've done. They hate the West. In Africa especially, Africa is kept poor by the West to enrich themselves. This has been going on since the 1880s and before. Like, Africa is kept poor despite being one of the most mineral-rich parts of Africa, being some of the most mineral-rich places in the world. Uranium, oil, other minerals. These countries should be very, very wealthy, but they're not, a lot of them. Congo, for example, How many, coups? And obviously in the 60s, how many African countries were taken over by socialist revolutions? How many of those African countries had their socialist leaders killed and replaced by a Western-backed dictator? How many times has that happened? How many times did the US back apartheid South Africa fighting communist Africans in Angola, for example? The US would literally back Nazi South Africans. They'd rather back Nazi South Africans than actual African communists who wanted to decide their own fate. And Nelson Mandela obviously said like the Cuban War in Angola like helped end apartheid and stuff like that. So yeah, it's like for me personally, why I said like German leftists are kind of bad. I like Japanese leftists a bit more. Is just like while this stuff is a bit extreme, like anti-fried chicken, anti-cola, anti-American coffee, anti-New York, anti-Disneyland. Why that is, in my mind, a bit extreme, maybe verging on a tiny bit xenophobic. I at least like the criticism of cultural imperialism, which I don't think exists enough because I guess we disregard soft power a bit more. And I guess the funny thing about soft power is we never really discuss American soft power and how it makes people accept US actions on the world stage. But when China starts investing in movies or video games, there is hysterical reactions by the conservatives and liberals like, China are infiltrating our American companies to push communism and push Chinese nationalism, all this shit. And it's like, well, Americans, you don't like it when other groups of people who aren't Western aligned are having a cultural influence like China are starting to have now. It's okay when Japan have a cultural influence because, well, not always, because in the 1980s, the Americans hated the Japanese economic and cultural influence. But like Korean, even though most of the Korean media is anti-capitalist and to a degree anti-American, that's okay because they're Western aligned. But Chinese video games becoming popular, Chinese movies becoming popular, that's not okay. Chinese companies buying stakes in American companies, not okay. Like we can't do that. But everything through America, that's like fine and good and stuff. Again, I do not understand. Like if you are an anti-capitalist, you should not in any situation be choosing the US as your favorite like superpower. I think at the very least you should be wanting a world where the power is more divided, so we don't have a country like America, like at the moment, which completely dominates the system, and then we don't have in the future a country like Russia or China also dominating that global system, because I don't want any of these countries to dominate. I don't think that's a good way, because the same way, I think the Chinese system is interesting conceptually. I'm not like insane about China. I also don't agree with a lot of things the Chinese government do, and I definitely wouldn't want them as it is run by a communist party, but I think Chinese nationalism is a bit too strong in the current Chinese government and administration that I wouldn't want China having the US size influence on the world, because I just don't think any one country like that dominating will lead to good things. But I do think if you have more different blocks, especially for Latin America, and that's more like if Latin America gets rid of a lot of its fascists as well, which needs to happen, and then African Union, which is obviously plagued by horrible civil wars in some of these countries, a lot of them obviously not helped by the US presence in these countries or the US wars on terror in these countries. But again, it's something I'd like to see a bit more, but we'll see. Again, like Japanese leftists, if you're an anti-capitalist, the key enemy will always be America. Oh, that's all the quote is. But there is more quotes. He talks about I think he talks about Marvel movies and stuff. I'm going to take some of your quotes now. Chris Bennett, thanks so much for $10, Chris. Really, really appreciate it. American exceptionalism doesn't just go away because someone is a leftist, unfortunately. Yep, I've experienced that a lot. I'm not saying a lot of my subscribers are American leftists, and I know a lot of really smart and good, decent American leftists I agree with. I just think American exceptionalism in terms of American leftism, it extends to the way they understand global politics, and I also think the moral center of America being good, even if it's bad, I don't think rubs off as quickly. I can imagine a lot of American leftists disagreeing with my take I've just given on America, for example. I see it as the main enemy of democracy, of anti-capitalism, the main enemy of socialism, and not because, even though this is debatable, I think you can make an argument both ways, is one of the worst countries, superpowers in the world, but it's just its foreign influence is always about capital and enriching itself, and that ensures that historically it's backed fascist dictators, happy to wage awful wars of imperialism, Vietnam being the worst one of them, and prop up the worst people imaginable, like the Saudis and other people, while at the same time keeping other countries poor and making sure through their sanctions they empower these far right groups like Iran, for example, right? I firmly believe if Iran was under brutal sanctions, their society would have liberalized more and it would be a more free society. But it's this us versus them mentality, especially with the Iranian history. Iran has a revolution, then gets invaded by Iraq, backed by the Saudis, France, and the United States, and then defeats them, and then gets slapped with a load of sanctions, gets put in with the axis of evil. George Bush rejects their I think an agreement that they wouldn't invade if they surrendered their nuclear capabilities, while constantly getting attacked by Israel, and then the US doesn't do anything to rein that in. So in my mind, it happens with less Cuba because it's more isolated, but like North Korea, China, before it opened up to the world. I think the problem with these sanctions, Venezuela as well, is you just create these countries that you isolate them already, and then the people there, like with Russia, I believe this is why I think the Russian stuff is a bit short-sighted. Is that a lot of people in Russia are not going to blame Putin for the economic condition; they're going to blame the West, and that's the problem with a lot of these countries. Is like you put sanctions on them, and you think that they'll turn on their government, but they don't, and the government just uses as part of the nationalism to get more support, and they're like, well. And they can also explain away the problems. Like people aren't going to blame Putin, or a lot of people won't. They'll just be like, "Well, West, why do you hate Russians? Why do you hate us? Like, why are you doing these sanctions?" And sadly, I actually think that might work in this case as well. So I think if the US had an interest in like these countries being better, they would let them open up more and not be under sanctions as much. But the problem, of course, is the US doesn't want these countries to be better. It wants regime change so they can access like natural resources and stuff. So I'm gonna read some comments now, and then I think we'll wrap it up after I read some comments. V, I'm gonna be fucking playing Horizon after this anyway. So, read some more stuff. Yeah, Marika, I wouldn't idolize the EU too much, but the EU project is a bit better in that I do like the freedom of movement. I am going to get my Irish passport hopefully next year. Sorry, there's so many comments. I'm just trying to find some that I can read quick. Have you considered communism bad because God said it or something? Oh no, I never considered that. Yeah, Canada has done a good job at positioning itself as like a more liberal, better version of America, but then it has so much of its own problems Americans and the West don't really see. Yeah, someone said eugenics, Hitler got it from America. Yep. Manifest Destiny wanted to copy in Eastern Europe. Nazi judges went to study American race law in the 30s to establish their own race laws. So you're not wrong about that. Kira, thanks so much. Cav, I love hearing you talk about geopolitical stuff. Always some of your best commentary. Yeah, I appreciate it. I do try and integrate it a bit in like my videos sometimes. Obviously, my master's degree was in international relations, so like I do really fucking love this stuff. But sometimes I can't really think of video topics that would fit in with my channel style. Sometimes. Yeah, the US has Canada and Europe beat for healthcare for trans people. Yeah, obviously not in every state, but I've been reading good things about healthcare for trans people in California. I've read a bit about, and it sounds like a lot better than the UK, for example. I'm just getting through the comments. Chris, thanks so much for another $20, man. That's insane. Really appreciate it though. Before I get to that, someone gave me a $5. Ron, thanks so much for the 5 Canadian bucks. I really appreciate that. The US has recently done this to Pakistan, getting rid of a liberal leader and having a regime change that would support their drone strikes. Yeah, Ron, like I'm not gonna give like a verdict on Pakistan right now because I haven't read enough about it. But obviously Khan going like since Trump, this has been happening. The US has been really unhappy with how Pakistan has been cozying up to China more, and obviously India is more Western aligned, but obviously has its own links with Russia as well. So it wouldn't exactly surprise me because they did put out that statement about Khan going more towards like the eastern countries. But thanks so much for the $5. I need to read a bit more about it before I get to that point. Chris Bennett, sorry, just getting around to comments. So again, thanks so much for $20. The US punishes the people for the actions of the other governments and wealthy elites. The US targeted non-military targets in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. If they wanted to hit Putin, the sanctions would take money from his oligarchs. Yeah, Chris, I said that at the start of the conflict. I appreciate you bringing that up. Is that there are so many oligarch-owned houses in the UK that they could just like take, like just take it. If the sanctions are so important, just take it. But Russian money funds the Tory party and it funds our government, and that's why it's shit. And in the US, I'm not sure the situation in the US, but I'm sure there's a lot of Russian money in the US as well. And punishing every person in a society, I just don't think it makes any sense. Like, and I think it like I made a video about this and I talked about the Iraq sanctions that just killed like hundreds of thousands of children. It's never going to get support for the regime to be overthrown because as much as people will hate the regime, they won't blame the regime for the economic situation. They'll blame the Western sanctions. I think the US always, unless cruelty is just the point, and they for some moral thing they want to punish all these people, then I don't understand it. Veronica saying America being bad provides cover for Canada. Yeah, I see America, Canada, the UK, and Australia. Like when I talk about America, I'm always kind of referring to their lackeys in like those sorts of Western aligned countries as well. Yeah, Abby, I didn't learn much about international law, but I think you could have because you get to choose your modules, don't you? Yeah, but Alex, the problem is, and a lot of people who are like patriotic communists, it's a bit ridiculous because with the US history is irredeemable, and while there's cool bits like 1870s communist movements and stuff like that, fundamentally the foundation of America is genocide, racism, native slavery. There is nothing redeeming about a patriotic. You can't be a patriotic communist in America. The only thing I'd accept if you took someone like an American communist and you're like, we are going to like fundamentally change this country and we're going to base it on the teachings of this guy, or I don't know, I'm not saying John Brown was a communist, but like we are the, I don't know, the sons of, we're the military sons of John Brown, we're going to overthrow the US government and create a completely new state. It's like being an Israeli communist or something, right? It just doesn't make any sense. If you were a communist in Israel, you'd be like, well, I want to overthrow the Israeli state and create a secular Palestinian state for everyone in Palestine, right? With America, you'd be like, well, I want to overthrow the American government and basically deconstruct this nation and free everyone in this country so we're all equal, native people, black people, stuff like that. So I cannot see, but then there's different movements, right? So Ireland, for example, Ireland as a modern country was never allowed to form by British colonialism. So when the Irish rose up, particularly in the 1910s, they had this socialist vision of Ireland, based in part on Irish history. But it was like, we are going to create this country based on like some historical borders of Ireland, and it's going to be based on socialism. That's what a lot of the original IRA believed in, not how it turned out. But I still think if you wanted to overthrow the Irish government in a communist revolution, you have the basis based on the previous people 100 years ago. Where in America, you just don't have that. Like, who are you basing your American patriotism on? Like, who is this an American patriot that you can base it in history? If I wanted to if I wanted to do communist Irish patriotism, there are loads of figures who fought for that in Ireland and even tried to create the nation state and even were part of the founding of the nation state. Where I just don't think with America, Israel, the UK is a very, very weird one because obviously you could perhaps be a patriotic English communist. I specified the Englishness. I don't think you could be a patriotic British communist though, which I think is the difference. But then you have the whole like you'd have to get rid of all the colonies, I guess, or something like that. I don't think you could be patriotic Australian communist, patriotic New Zealand communist, Canadian communist. It just makes no fucking sense because if you're there's just nothing redeeming about settler colonialism where the whole identity of that country is wrapped up in to be a patriot and also a communist. I just don't think it makes any sense. Shit, Chris, I think you donated again, bro. Chris, I appreciate the donations so much. You're a madman for giving me so much. I suspect sanctions aren't taking away oligarch money because then that could happen to billionaires from other countries. Last one from me, thanks to the content. Chris, I appreciate your support so much and the super chats. Yeah, Chris, I talked about this a bit in my video. Shit, when was it? It was about the Armenian genocide, and basically I was like, why won't the UK and Israel recognize the Armenian genocide? And it's like, well, the UK and Israel have done very similar things that they don't want people to recognize as genocides, right? So if they start recognizing this, then there might be movements to recognize their own genocides, or people telling them, well, recognize your own genocides first. And that's what Erdogan, of course, did to the Americans. He was like, well, you recognize the Armenian genocide, recognize your own genocide. You killed all those natives. And that's what I think a lot of people are afraid of, maybe, is like, if they really sanction and tolerate the oligarchs, then do a lot of these other countries who might be more Russian aligned or Chinese aligned, do they start targeting American oligarchs as well? Which is a really good point. So yeah, thanks so much for the super chats and the support. I really, really appreciate it, Chris. Really, really nice of you to do that. Sorry, I'm gonna read some comments. What are you guys talking about? Sorry, let's read some more comments. Fanes, that's funny. Liberals go on and on about the cult of personality and socialist experiments, whilst worshipping the founding fathers who are slave owners and all around awful human beings. Yeah. Fidel Castro, for all his flaws, is an infinitely more moral person than pretty much any of the founding fathers, and also any US president. But Fidel Castro does have a lot of negatives. So I'll say this differently. Che Guevara is 1,000 times more moral and ethical than any US president or US founding father. And that's just 100% true. Like, and the thing is, a lot of people will lump in the negatives of Fidel in with Che Guevara without realizing Che Guevara was only in the government for was it under a year? Then he left to do a revolution in the Congo and then Bolivia. So he's not really a part of the Cuban state. So you know, we talk about like the gay camps and stuff, which did exist. I'm not even gonna pretend they didn't. But Che Guevara was not in the government when this happened. And people say Che Guevara was a racist, and I was like, well, yeah, he was a racist when he was younger. He also went to go fight a revolution with Black Africans against Europeans. Like, I mean, he probably was racist in terms of like his beliefs on race would probably be racist today. But I mean, for a guy in the 1960s to go fight anti-colonial revolutions with Africans against Europeans, I can think of a lot more racist people like fucking Ronald Reagan or even Joe Biden. Raphael, I kind of cancelled the royal family last year at some point. I forgot what video though. People correct me if I'm wrong. Cuba wasn't communist until the US sanctions, right? Cuba wasn't originally established as a communist state. I think I remember reading that somewhere. Like, Cuba didn't become communist until after the Bay of Pigs, but it was obviously a communist revolution. I don't know if I remember that wrong. I mean, I'm sure Castro was he might not have been much of a true believer as Che Guevara. Sarah, yeah, I'll start cancelling them. Capitalism is when you accept super chats. I'm a capitalist now. I love money. Yeah, Raxim. I went to Spain obviously to live for 3 months, and I didn't bring my PS5, and now I'm playing Horizon Zero Dawn, and I kind of want to complete a couple other games like Metal Gear Rising before I go back to Far Cry. I did play it for like 20 minutes the other day, but I want to complete some other stuff first. Hey, the Juice. Watch all your vids. Thanks so much for the support. Appreciate it. Um, Yeah, veins. The only funny thing about that is obviously I don't agree with what Fidel did to gay people in Cuba. It's also coming from people who fucking support Ronald Reagan. Like there is no do people not have any sense of irony when they do that? Yeah, Ramek, I'm playing the second one. I love the first one though. So I read some more stuff. Did I piss on Franco's grave? I couldn't find it. Yeah, Sophita, or Sophitia. I wouldn't say it's like Breath of the Wild. If you want a game that actually is very much inspired by Breath of the Wild, Immortals Phoenix Rising is a mashup of basically Assassin's Creed Odyssey, but it's mainly inspired by Breath of the Wild. Like it's very, very similar. Like you could even maybe describe it as a Breath of the Wild clone. It's a very good game as well. I'd say there's some things it does even better than Breath of the Wild, although it's not overall better. So I'd check that out for sure. You can make your character female in it as well. Horizon obviously came out in the same month, I think, as the original Zelda Breath of the Wild, but very very different. I'd compare it more to something like The Witcher in terms of its structure and quest style, rather than Breath of the Wild. I've only played it Andromeda in Mass Effect, and I liked it. Cancel me for it, but I liked it. Yeah, Forbidden West, I'm hyped to play a bit more of today. The American founding fathers declared independence so they can make even more money, and because they knew slavery would be ending soon, they were the equivalent of Iowa guts today. Yeah, for sure, Chris. Totally spot on. Like the belief that the American founding fathers gave a single shit about democracy and freedom, like for your average man, is pretty laughable. Nano machines, son. Yeah, so there's. I definitely need to play some more. Ted Farah, yeah, evil piece of shit. But I haven't seen his role in the next one, so don't spoil it for me. Halo Infinite was solid. The best Halo campaign since the Bungie ones, but that's not saying too much. Yeah, I know I played the original Mass Effect, only Andromeda, which I did like. Yeah, Ramek, that the character at the start of Horizon Forbidden West reminds me of Elon Musk, that space thing as well. Bad because is there even pronouns in Halo Infinite? Like, is there non-binary or trans characters in it? Halo One, Halo ODST, underrated. Dragon Age Inquisition was good, but it's my first one. Okay, so I don't know how long I've been streaming for. Let me have a look quick. Yeah, Far Zenith. That's what I was thinking of. All right, give me 1 second, people. I don't know if all right, everyone. Final thing to say: if you can think of a Japanese anime or game, could be like Final Fantasy VII, Near Automata, or some shit like that. If you have a good article on it, please send it my way on Twitter. I've posted a tweet about it because that's what my video is going to be on tomorrow. At the moment, I'm going to talk about Metal Gear, Miyazaki's anime, maybe about Cowboy Bebop as well, and maybe some of the shit you've been telling me in this, like Full Metal Alchemist and stuff. Losing, thanks so much for the $6, Canadian. Have you seen the Halo TV series? Anti-SJWs mauling over Black Captain Keys. That's funny. Like, it's so crazy they'll be crying about that, considering it's Halo, like this really massive sci-fi universe. But I've seen their reaction and they hate the new show. I think it sounds pretty dumb because of, like, for example, they know what the Halo ring is before they go there for the first time. Like, that just ruins so much of it for me. But I did want to kind of make a video on it. Maybe I'll wait a bit longer though. Oh yeah, Alex, I'm not saying you shouldn't teach that stuff. Like, you know, the miners who fought the National Guard and like workers' movements. I'm just saying I don't think America is redeemable as a state for leftist people. All right. I'm gonna leave it there. Thanks so much for the stream. Thanks so much for the super chats, everyone. Really supportive today. I'm really enjoying streaming again. It was pretty cool to have like 200 people listen to me talk about Blade Runner. But thanks so much for the super chats. Thanks so much for all the fun comments, the good conversation. I'm hopefully gonna put up Sunday's stream on my second channel, but I'm gonna edit it first. I'll put this up soon as well, hopefully. So stay tuned for that Japanese leftism video tomorrow. I'm going to stream again on Thursday evening. I don't know what time yet. It might have to be a bit earlier. And I got some collabs I'm going to be doing in the next couple of weeks, so I'll make sure to link them. But yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in. Again, I'm probably going to post this on my second channel, the Kavernacle Extra. Just need to stop being fucking lazy and forgetting to do it. And yeah, check out. Well, if you're only here for the streams, see you on Thursday, and look out for the video tomorrow. And if you haven't watched it already, check out my Jordan Peterson Bitcoin video as well. So anyway, thanks so much for the really good stream, and see you guys in the next one.